Well, hey neighbors, welcome to the Shed Shop in this edition of How To. Today is December 23, 2023. It's almost the pagan holiday Christmas. That's something I'd really like to touch on, and it's going to offend a lot of people, but frankly, I don't give a shit. I want to be able to speak my mind without being hated on. It's America. Isn't that what we're supposed to be able to do? If you're offended, so sorry but not sorry. Did you know that a lot of Christians celebrate Christmas and they dress up their Christmas tree with ornaments and candy canes, and they spend thousands of dollars on toys while children are starving across the street from them and families are struggling to get by? Do you know all the different reasons that people say to justify? Well, to me it means Jesus' birthday. But if you read your Bible, you will know Jesus was a Jew. And if you place his time around the time of the festivals that are spoken about in the Bible, him being Jewish, he was probably born sometime in October. And did you know that you can't sit there and say that it means his birthday to you, but you're dressing up a Christmas tree? Because did you know in the Old Testament, it talks about how the pagans would go out and cut down a Christmas tree and dress it with ornaments and worship their pagan gods. So not only is it the wrong time of year for Christ's birth, if you believe in Jesus, but it's also a pagan thing to dress up a Christmas tree. And not only that, we tell our kids about Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny, but I don't believe in that shit. You guys go down in the comments and tell me what you think about that shit. Good or bad. Just be nice. Because here's the thing. You start your child off by lying to them, deceiving them, and tricking them. What kind of morals is that raising your child on? And people say, a lot of adults say, well, I only do it for the kids. But you're responsible for your child. And so when you go out and you buy presents and you contribute to corporate America raping us, and you go out on Black Friday and kill each other to get discount prices on items that don't matter. Hey, listen, non-Christians, this isn't for you. Okay? You can listen. You might like it because I'm ripping on Christians. Okay? Here's the thing. Christmas is a pagan holiday. It is 100% pagan. And the billions of dollars that Americans spend each year on Christmas could really go to making the world a better place. How is it that one man can have $100 billion and we still have people on the streets that are broke? Well, because you buy Christmas trees, you dress them up with ornaments, and you spend thousands of dollars on gifts so that other people have to feel guilty. And then most people bitch about, oh, I'm going to have to be with the in-laws, and I'm going to have this and that. And it's families arguing. It's really not families coming together. And they say, oh, well, I'll just celebrate it because it's a time for family to come together. But if you're a Christian and you're dressing up a pagan tree with pagan ornaments, and it's in the Bible that it's a pagan thing, there's no justification to it, especially when it's not Jesus' birthday. And you can say, well, it's what it means to me. But what about what it means to him? If he's real, you really think he likes that shit? Honestly, think about it for a minute, neighbors. That's my intro for today. I want to teach you about removing transfer from your chainsaw cylinder. Now, if you're somebody selling chainsaws to somebody else, I think it's wrong to remove transfer unless you notify them that you've done that and they understand what it is. There's several different ways we can do this, neighbors. One, you can use muriatic acid. I do have some, but it's not my preferred method. I used to do it a lot, especially when there was a lot of transfer on the cylinder. If it's your own chainsaw and you're trying to save money, this is actually a great video for you. If your piston is scored, like this, neighbor, you have to deep six that shit and buy you a new one. However, if your cylinder has transfer on it, but it's not scored, there's no gouges in the walls, the plating, you might be able to save it. I have here a Stihl MS391 cylinder, and unfortunately, neighbors, I'm waiting on batteries for my light, so I'm going to give you the best view I can of the transfer on this, but it's a very small amount of transfer. And my customer neighbor would really like to save money, and so he said, yeah, if instead of $150 for a new cylinder, you can charge me $30 in labor to remove that shit, I'd like you to. Can you do a video on building my saw? Well, I said, sure, neighbor. So, I'm going to turn you down to the bench, and we're going to get to work. Damn it. Neighbors! Oh, you said I didn't tell you the other ways? Well, sandpaper, Scotch-Brite emery pads. I'm using 220. That's too coarse, Chainsaw Redeemer. You're right, it is. You can take plating off with that. That's why we're going to use oil with our sandpaper. Because number one, I don't have anything but like 1000 grit. And I would take 6 years with 1000 grit to remove this transfer. But this is a project where you just turn on the Chainsaw Redeemer videos and you watch him with your camera in the mount and you just tinker and tittle away. This is a process that you have to do patiently. You can't just go in there all rough and hard because you'll ruin it. You'll take off too much plating. And if we take off too much plating, then our ring gap is going to be too wide, our saw is going to have low compression, and the fuel is not going to be able to pass to the top and bottom of the cylinder properly. And your chainsaw is going to flood. And then it's not going to run right, neighbors. And then you wasted all your time. So let's turn down to the bench and get to work, damn it, neighbors. I'd like to thank Rob Weaver and Chelsea Weaver and Sarah Weaver for their donation of sending dinner to my house through DoorDash the other day. Thank you, Rob Weaver, for my new knife. I now have 4 knives from Rob Weaver. One of them is a machete. 2 of them are flip knives. Oh, no, I have 5. One of them is a bone knife. And then he has sent me this really cool knife that's a Badger knife that you can actually swap out handles and different blades and shit. I haven't used it yet, but I'm using a lot of oil because, again, this is only 220 grit. Now, I will do the best I can. I believe we can turn on the light, right, neighbors? There we are. You see this transfer right here. Okay, we're going to look right here to the right of my finger. Okay, let me get a pointer. That might help. Okay, it looks like there's transfer here, but we can't feel that. Okay, right here we can feel. Okay, right here there's a little bit, and then way up here at the top there's a tiny bit. We're going to remove that and see if there's any scoring underneath that. If there's scoring, we have to deep 6-stitch it, and I'll have a used one I'm going to sell my neighbor. But if there's not, I'm only going to charge him a little bit of money for the labor because it's such a small amount, we should be able to do it pretty easily. So again, if you only have coarse sandpaper, use oil or soapy water as a lubricant, and you're just going to go in there, and you're just gently, we're not pushing hard, you're just going to gently work that transfer off. What you do with muriatic acid is you take a Q-tip, and you put the Q-tip into the muriatic acid, and then you rub it only on the transfer, and you let it sit, and then you go back a few minutes later, and you continue with another Q-tip with muriatic acid, and you just little by little wipe the transfer off. Okay? And like I said, this is just a patient thing. So when I edit this video, I'm going to put this at fast speed, and we'll see how long it turns out to be. And then the next video on this saw is going to be me assembling it. Either with this cylinder, after it gets an ultrasonic, if this works, and it feels like this transfer is coming off fairly easily, which is good news. Okay, this saw ran, but he had issues with it dying in the cut. And I wasn't taking on new customer work, but I had decided to go ahead and take this saw because I thought it was going to be a quick 60 bucks. Turns out, Chainsaw Redeemer never gets that fortunate. The other thing was, thank you also, Rob Weaver, Chelsea Weaver, and Sarah Weaver for your donations to the Shed Shop so that the Chainsaw Redeemer could buy his family groceries. Because the food pantry is good, but they don't give you very much here. And it doesn't last you very long. And they don't give you enough to actually make a balanced meal. They just give you a couple of canned items. So, Sarah Weaver, Rob Weaver, and Chelsea Weaver sent a donation to help the Chainsaw Redeemer buy groceries for his family because he hasn't sold any saws hardly. I did sell the Stihl 029 Super. The one that was a nightmare. You guys saw that hanging on a hook forever, and you've heard me talk about it quite a bit. I had found a pinhole in the exhaust line, or in the impulse hose, that I probably caused when I installed it on the saw. And so we finally fixed that up. And that saw sold today. All I did to that saw was re-ring it, replace all the rubbers. It was a really clean, pretty saw. And I sold it really, really, really cheap. I sold it for the price I sell an 025 for, $325 with an 18-inch. Every single 029 I've sold this year, 029 Super, I've gotten $425 for a 20-inch or $375 for an 18-inch. But because the market has been so slow, and I really wanted to sell a saw, I wanted to make sure they would take the hour drive to come look at it. And it's kind of my fault because I hadn't lowered the price on Craigslist, but I had on Marketplace. And so I probably could have got that saw for $375, but I'm glad I sold it for $325 because it was a gift. I'm just feeling if this transfer is coming off. It is a little bit, but not as much as I'd like. So again, this is just a very slow process, and you want to try and stay in the area that your transfer is only. And you don't go in and out of the cylinder like this. You always want to go side to side because that's the way your crosshatch would be. Now, as far as honing, just so you know, honing a cylinder will not remove transfer. Okay, all it's going to do is put crosshatches in your transfer. Okay, so you cannot use a hone to remove transfer. You can hone after you've done this, and I always decide whether or not to hone based on what my cylinder feels and looks like after I remove my transfer. So again, this is just a very slow process. You got to take your time, okay? And I can already feel that our transfer is coming off, and it really is not that much. I'm going to come down here and just make sure I don't feel anything catching, and I don't. So I'm going to stay on my one spot here, okay, and just continue to work that. We're making good progress here, neighbors. Use a new part of my sandpaper here. And like I said, you don't want to use, in my opinion, you don't want to use a 220 dry on this. I think it's just too coarse. And I think it will remove plating. And we don't want to remove our plating, okay? The top of these can be hard to reach. Sometimes what I'll do is I will zip tie a piece of sandpaper to a handle like this. I use my other one because this one's too wide for most cylinders, but I'll zip tie my sandpaper to that, and then I'll use it like this, but I make sure my zip tie doesn't sit there and rub my cylinder. Okay, you can use a tool that's not going to damage your stuff. You know what I did have? No, that's 220, so it's the same as what I'm using. Okay, I'm trying to feel up at the top. I don't really feel a ton of transfer at the top, and the thing is, you can tell if there's grooves or scratches, because if you run a pick very lightly like this, or your fingernail test, we call it the fingernail test, you don't want your nail to catch it all. Okay, and I'm still catching a little bit on that transfer. Like I said, this thing did not have a ton of transfer. Most of the time, you're going to find your transfer on your exhaust side. Most of the time, transfer is on the exhaust side. What causes transfer? Well, your piston gets too hot and it literally melts. And then what happens is, as it goes up and down in the cylinder, the melting metal on the piston transfers onto the cylinder wall. And so it can be removed, but if it gouges your cylinder plating, again, neighbors, that means you have to deep six that chip. I have a Stihl MS290 cylinder off of a saw that ran great, but they could never get it fully idled or tuned in right. They never told me that when they traded it in, and it was a beautiful 290. And so I gave them a good trade-in price. But when I took the saw apart, as you guys have seen if you've seen the video, it came to a nightmare crashing halt. Because it had a score mark all the way down the exhaust side, yet the saw still run and cut. It just couldn't ever get idled in right. And that's because we didn't have our rings properly seating on our cylinder wall. The challenge with this is, if you don't do this right, you're going to ruin your brand new piston, okay? I've never used these before, but the reviews on it are good. It's a performance coated piston. It's the Dukes. I think the Dukes, all their prices are way too high. So respectfully, I think they're selfish, greedy people, because some of the stuff they sell, I know what they get it for, and they're marking it up like 600 and 700%. And I say 600 and 700%. That's after their total cost. See, my concern is, I do feel like we have a score line in this. Okay, but I can't, it's always, sometimes it's really hard to tell whether it's transfer or a score. And so I just have to keep going. Okay, and if I can't get it to where it doesn't catch nail, that means it's a gouge mark. The slightest score mark on your cylinder will make your chainsaw not run right. And again, you can ruin your piston. The other thing that can cause scoring is you get little carbon buildups. And yeah, see up here, no, that feels fine. It doesn't catch nail. It looks like it would, but it doesn't. It's hard to tell sometimes. Okay, I think we're okay. Especially when you can't quite get your short freaking sausage fingers in there. Yeah, it feels okay. And those carbon deposits will end up getting, causing scoring on your piston. And then what it pulls out of the piston ends up transferring onto the cylinder wall. And sometimes the carbon deposits will come off and will get stuck between the piston and the cylinder wall. And that oftentimes is what causes scoring on the cylinder. I forget what size. Is this a 47 mil? It is. So I do believe I have a hone for this. Okay, I'm still not certain. Like I said, this wasn't a ton of transfer. So that's why I chose to go ahead. I've been wanting to do this video for a while, but I don't remove transfer very often anymore. I used to sell saws that I remove transfer from, and I still do once in a blue moon if it's only like this. But I sell the saw cheaper, and I notify the customer. I explain to them exactly what I've done, and so they get to make an executive decision, or they get to make an informed decision, I mean. Okay, this has still got some grit to it, but it's not quite taking that off, and that's why I'm starting to wonder if we, in fact, have scoring on our cylinder wall. But I can still see a little piece of transfer here. Accidentally pushed stop, damn it, neighbors. So I had to start recording again, and we'll merge these videos. This is usually something I like to just turn on tunes and sit down on my chair. I don't know why I do myself dirty all the time and stand up. It's probably because I have no knee room. Okay. Don't have the greatest light either. Trying to get the YouTube better, you guys. I'm trying to get it so I can give you better quality videos. And I know I suck at titling my videos and thumbnails because I have boring titles and boring thumbnails. But I don't like to deceive you guys. So that's why my titles are accurate descriptions of what the video is and not clickbait. I don't like making clickbait unless it's true clickbait. I haven't been giving you guys Shed Shop updates lately either, but I am really fighting depression really bad lately because I really thought I invested everything and I risked it all for this business. I really thought I was doing the right thing. But unfortunately, it's not working out because of my health preventing me from working. And so I'm losing money. And I continue to lose money because I buy parts for saws. And my eBay is all screwed up because of when I went to jail. When they falsely arrested me. My eBay, my seller performance went down because obviously people were buying stuff and not getting it. And so now I have restrictions on my eBay account. And so my idea of parting saws out on eBay is kind of not an option right now either. I'm feeling like we have a score mark because there's just one little spot. It almost looks like transfer, but if the fact that it's not coming off is concerning me. I feel like I'm right on it, but it's just not coming out. The rest of it came off really easy, so this one little spot not coming off makes me feel like it's a scratch. And then what I'll do after this, I don't have a digital bore gauge, so it's not as accurate, but I do have a bore gauge and calipers, and so I'll take some bore measurements and we'll get as close as we can to find out, you know, if it's an obvious measurement to where we're like 30 thou lower than we're supposed to be, then obviously we know we've lost plating and this cylinder will be no good. Okay, and now that I got new sandpaper, I've lightened up how hard I'm pushing down. I'm really not putting any pressure, especially given this is 220. Even with oil, it is really coarse for this job. But the Chainsaw Redeemer doesn't have other sandpaper except 1000 grit and 800 grit, and I don't like using that for this except at the end. Okay, we still got this one spot. Yeah, I do think we are scratched, unfortunately. No, maybe that's still transfer. And if the sandpaper doesn't start taking it off, I'm going to use muriatic acid and see if that assists us. Because I don't like sanding this much on one little spot. I do feel it's scratched. Okay, so now I'll show you the muriatic acid trick, because that's going to help me find out. That's going to help me determine if this is scratched. I am a little concerned that it's a scratch. I'm checking the rest of our cylinder. It looks okay. I do feel we probably have lost some plating here at the bottom, however. So, let me get some muriatic acid. Now, don't do what I do. I recommend you wear mask and gloves when you do this, because as this comes in contact with the aluminum transfer, it's going to smoke, and you don't want those vapors in your lungs. So we'll just put a little bit of muriatic acid. You can see it foaming up there. So that does tell me, and I'll put it in other places, see if we get any foaming, and we don't. So I know that's not transfer. Okay, but that spot, the way it's foaming, it, however, could be that it's already scratched through the plating. Okay? And you can go up and down with the muriatic acid. You don't have to go side to side. But even with the Q-tip, I feel it catching. But it could be catching in a groove. Or it could be catching on transfer. I just can't quite tell yet. So again, I recommend you wear gloves, but my hands, I can't feel them anyway, so it doesn't really matter to me. Don't yell at me for smoking, neighbors. Jesus said it's not what goes into a man's mouth that defiles him, but what comes out of it. People say, don't you know your body is the temple of the Holy Ghost? Well, yes, but that talks about sexual sin. Because it says sexual sin is the only sin where you defile the inside. Because when you fornicate, according to the Bible, whatever evil spirits the person you're fornicating with, they're now in your body as well. They're now in your holy temple as well. Okay, so now that I've done that, I'm just going to go ahead and wipe this off and feel it. Okay, and then I'm going to take me lots of soapy water and wash this out. Soapy water. Okay, like I said, I don't love using muriatic acid. But it's just to show you guys, again, if this is your chainsaw. See how all of that turned white. Okay. I'm starting to wonder if this is an aluminum plated cylinder. Yeah, and I still feel that one spot. It's the same exact spot still. I still feel it, so it still concerns me. And the thing is, if this doesn't work, I have to eat the cost of this piston and all this labor, because I can't say, well, neighbor, you wanted me to try and remove that transfer, so you have to pay for the next piston and everything. I can't do that to him. But yes, you can remove transfer. I have had saws that I built in the past, and 5 years later, they were my personal saws, still running fine. And they've had a lot more transfer than this. But again, unfortunately, this one has very minor scratches in it. And so I will sell my neighbor a used one, and I will not charge him for this labor. So until next time, neighbors, be kind to one another. Everyone's facing a battle. Like the video, comment down below, subscribe to the channel if you're not already, and love your damn neighbors.